From the outside, people see Ibrahim Mahama's lifestyle and assume the usual things. Whenever a Ghanaian sees a man with money, especially a man whose name is connected to politics, their first reaction is suspicion. People whisper. People create stories. People try to find backdoors, loopholes, shortcuts, secret wires, pulling the strings. In Ghana, success is never allowed to stand on its feet. It must have a political root somewhere, even if that connection has nothing to do with how the person actually made their money. But with Ibrahim Mahama, the truth is layered. The truth is long, scattered, and hidden behind years of struggle, calculated moves, risks most people will never attempt, and a type of patience that ordinary people do not understand. He didn't wake up one morning and become one of the most financially stable businessmen in the country. He didn't appear because his brother became a president. He didn't manufacture his name out of thin air, and he didn't depend on noise or social media to push his narrative. Long before Ghana even knew who he was, his heavy machines were already digging in the soil of mining companies. His engineers were already working. His factories were already being planned. His risk appetite was already in motion. But the streets don't see that part. The streets only see the surface. And once the surface shines, people assume it's politics or some shortcut. So let's break it down the way Wicked Blogger Ghana would break it down. No filters, no polishing, no holding back. The real truth behind Ibrahim Mahama's wealth starts with one simple thing. He understood early that if you want to build big money in Ghana, you don't follow the crowd. You don't chase trending jobs. You don't join the same saturated hustle everybody is running into. You don't follow the small markets where people fight for crumbs. You go to the space that requires courage, capital, and confidence, the kind of space that scares 95% of Ghanaians away. That's what he did, where other people were trying to start boutiques, salons, restaurants, bars, small importing businesses, online shops, and short-term trades. He entered the heavy-duty world. Construction, mining support, engineering, haulage, logistics, and later cement. These are industries where one successful contract can change a person's life forever. But they're also industries where one mistake can collapse everything. The risk is high, but the returns are higher. And Ibrahim Mahama didn't just enter the sector, he dominated it. But before we reach the domination stage, let's go all the way back. Because to understand the truth behind his wealth, you must understand where the hunger started. He didn't come from a poor, hopeless background, but he also didn't come from an environment where everything was already laid out for him. People hear the Mahama name and assume he grew up in money. But the truth is that the Mahama household wasn't built on gold. They had stability, yes, but not luxury. They had direction, yes, but not fortune. The kind of money Ibrahim owns today did not come from inheritance. It came from building something from the ground with his own hands and strategies. When he started his journey abroad, he worked jobs that didn't match the wealth people associate with him today. He studied, he hustled, he watched, and he learned. He took time to understand how industries work, how major companies scale, how they acquire heavy equipment, how they bid for contracts, how they handle multiple projects at once, and how they reinvest profits into expansion. That knowledge became his secret weapon. When he returned to Ghana, he didn't start shouting. He didn't open unnecessary offices to show off. He didn't run to local celebrities for attention. He didn't waste money trying to impress people. He went straight into business execution. He looked at the mining sector and saw a gap. At that time, most of the big mining support contractors were foreign companies, South Africans, Australians, and Europeans. They controlled the heavy contracts, they controlled the equipment, they had the machines, they had the experience. Ghanaian companies were small in comparison. Local contractors had limited capacity, few machines, small teams, and low bargaining power. That's when Ibrahim realized something powerful. The only way to win in that space was to match the foreign contractors in strength. And to do that, he needed one thing, machines. Not one or two, dozens, then hundreds. Because in the mining world, contracts go to those who can deliver equipment, manpower, and reliability. A contractor without equipment is like a farmer without land. No matter how brilliant you are, nobody will hire you without the tools. So he went all in. This is where the story takes a turn that most Ghanaians do not understand. This is where the truth hides. Buying heavy equipment is not something an average business person would attempt. One excavator can cost more than 3-4 luxury cars combined. One dump truck can cost more than a mansion. One bulldozer can cost more than some company's entire yearly revenue. And yet, Ibrahim bought them in fleets. This is the part Ghanaians like to skip. People would rather say his brother was president, instead of accepting that a man had the courage to take on million-dollar risks before social media even existed. Engineers and planners didn't start when his brother became president. It didn't even start when his brother became vice president. It started long before. The machines were already working. The contracts were already flowing. The trucks were already moving. The groundwork was already done. It wasn't politics that built his success. It was strategy. As the machines worked, the contracts multiplied. As the contracts multiplied, the revenue grew. And instead of spending the money carelessly, he reinvested. That's the difference between a businessman who grows and a businessman who dies early. Ibrahim didn't reduce his equipment fleet, he expanded it. He didn't keep his team small, he grew it. He didn't stick to one mine, he spread across the country. He didn't stick to one industry, he diversified. By the time most Ghanaians started hearing the name Ibrahim Mahama, he was already deep into the industry. The foundation was already established. The contracts had already shaped him into a major force. His company had already earned its place in the mining sector. The revenue base had already solidified. And his reinvestment philosophy had already lifted him to a level where he could start venturing into bigger projects. That's how Zata Cement came into the picture. If you want to know how big Ibrahim is, you don't look at his cars or his lifestyle. You look at Zata Cement. You look at the factory sitting there as a statement. You look at the courage it takes to enter a market already dominated by global giants like Dangote, Gasem, and others. Cement is not a business for the weak. It is not a business for the fearful. It is not a business for those who depend on small capital. The machinery alone can bankrupt a careless businessman. The energy demand can crush a company that is not ready. The competition is tough. The market is tricky. And yet he went in. Why? Because that's how people who understand wealth think. They don't aim for small things. They don't chase temporary profits. They don't look for applause. They look for legacy and long-term dominance. But let's talk about something the streets keep getting wrong. Many people believe the reason Ibrahim succeeded is because of political influence. But the real story is different. The truth is that when a man already has capacity, real capacity, people in power respect him, not create him. When you have 200 machines, when you have engineers, when you have a working system, when you have contracts that prove your credibility, nobody creates you. You create yourself. Politics might give visibility or speed up certain processes, but it cannot build what is not there. You can't use influence to force a mining company to hire a contractor who has no machines. You can't force a factory to run without capital. You can't create a cement plant out of connections. A man must have money, structure, and vision before influence becomes useful. So the political money rumor doesn't hold water. Let's talk about another part people don't like to admit. Ibrahim Mahama has a habit many Ghanaians cannot copy. He reinvests almost everything. He does not care about quick fame. He does not care about flashy showmanship. He does not brag. While people with far less money rent Lamborghinis for attention, Ibrahim is busy buying more machines, more trucks, more equipment, more land, more industrial tools, and more expansion opportunities. That is the mindset that builds wealth. Not clothes, not alcohol, not nightlife, not online fame, not loud living, but reinvestment. While his machines were working in mining sites across Ghana and West Africa, he kept expanding. He built networks. He positioned his company to serve large multinational clients. These are clients who pay millions, clients who need reliability, clients who respect capacity. Over time, his income multiplied. But here's the part that truly reveals the secret behind his wealth. He doesn't fear big debts if they are tied to big assets. Most Ghanaians fear loans. They fear borrowing to expand. They fear taking risks that can change their lives. But wealthy people operate differently. They borrow to acquire assets that pay for themselves. They borrow to scale, not to decorate their lives. They borrow for machinery, not for handbags. They borrow for factories, not for lifestyle. That is the difference. By the time politicians started noticing him, he was already operating at a level they could not ignore. He became known not because someone handed him power, but because he had built something too big to be hidden. That is how his influence arrived. That is how his network expanded. That is how his wealth kept rising. Another thing that fuels his success is his understanding of industries where money never dies: mining, construction, cement, agriculture, logistics. These are not seasonal industries. These are not fragile markets. These sectors survive recessions, they survive politics, they survive currency instability, they survive global disruptions. That is why he chose them. That is why he remains strong no matter who is in power. People also forget that he learned from global business models. He didn't copy Ghanaian style business. He copied global scale business. He copied people who build empires, not people who just build small shops. He paid attention to how multinational corporations operate. He studied how mining companies work. He studied how to grow a cement brand. He studied how to build capacity that lasts. That is how he became who he is. But the journey wasn't smooth. He faced challenges. He faced scrutiny. He faced political noise. He faced accusations. He faced investigations. But the truth is simple. A man whose money is rooted in real business doesn't fear investigations. A man whose systems are clean doesn't panic. A man whose wealth is based on machinery, contracts, and factories doesn't hide. That is why he survives every rumor. His wealth is not hiding in secret offshore accounts. His wealth is not hiding in stolen funds. His wealth is parked in machines, equipment, infrastructure, land, factories, and assets you can touch. That's why he stands tall when people try to bring him down. To understand Ibrahim Mahama, you must understand that he's a builder, not a spender. He's a doer, not a talker. He's a risk taker, not a comfort seeker. His business life is a textbook example of how to build wealth in a developing country without shortcuts. He enters industries people fear. He invests in assets people avoid. He reinvests profits people would spend. He chooses long-term over short-term. He stays quiet while others make noise. He builds capacity instead of fame. He takes risks at a level most Ghanaians cannot imagine. That is why he's wealthy. That is the truth behind his money. Not politics, not shortcuts, not luck, not noise, capacity, courage, risk, reinvestment, strategy, patience. And that is the version Ghana refuses to accept, because it is easier to believe in rumors than to accept that someone actually built something big with discipline. So when people ask what is the secret behind Ibrahim Mahama's wealth, the real answer shocks them. There is no secret. The man simply does what others fear. He goes where others don't go. He invests where others panic. He reinvests where others withdraw. He builds what others only talk about. That is the real story. And Ghana better pay attention, because people like him are rare.